Today's video does contain some disturbing subject matter and viewer discretion is advised. And if you have a story you would like to send my way, just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. It was the summer of 2006. I could never forget it. I was 9 years old and my family and I were heading to the community pool. It was my dad, my mom, and my two older siblings. The pool was always a conflicting time for me. I loved the water, and I loved the water slide, and I even enjoyed swimming. However, I was not good at swimming, and in fact, I had a slight fear of the water, or of drowning. It was so hard to want to run and jump right into the pool, but as soon as it got higher than my knees, I slowed down and stiffened up. I could usually loosen up after being in the water for a period of time, but it was still frustrating for me at my age. I wanted to be able to jump off the diving board and swim laps with my friends, but I just wasn't there yet. But I did do my best to push through it and have a good time. This time was no different. I wanted to have fun with my siblings, and in fact, one of my friends even showed up. I don't know if that was planned or not, but it was a great surprise. We met in the water, and thankfully he knew my issues, so he didn't push me, and we slowly made our way deeper into the water. When we got into the deeper end, we stayed close to the side so that I could hold on to it, and we just talked and messed around. We talked about what we were looking forward to the following school year, made fun of people that we didn't like, and bet who could hold their breath longer. I was actually having a great time until one specific person started jumping off the diving board. The diving area was in the same pool, but it had a very steep drop because of how deep it went. It was also sectioned off, so you couldn't go over there just to casually swim. We were pretty close to the diving side with my friend's back to it, and me facing it. This guy was constantly jumping in and was obviously trying to do it for attention. I say that it was obvious because he kept yelling as he jumped in, and the lifeguards would yell at him to stop. We would turn and give dirty looks because the water would end up hitting us more than a normal person jumping in, and he was just flat out being obnoxious. However, us looking back seemed to be exactly what fed him, as he would make faces at us, say stuff in passing, and really just do childish things for a teenager like him to be doing. I suggested to my friend that we should just move somewhere else, but he was now adamant on staying. He didn't want to be bullied out of the spot that we had been at, so I stayed with him. I wish I would have pushed him harder to move. Every few hours, the lifeguard calls for a break in the pool, and when this happens, the lifeguards switch their posts, and only adults or those 18 plus and infants are allowed to swim. So when they all blew their whistles, we knew that we had to get out. Instead of having to walk all the way back to the shallow side and wait for the people in front of us, we thought it would be smart to go under the barrier into the diving side and use the ladder that was right next to us. I may have had a slight phobia of the water, but the laziness of young kids supersedes fear, I guess. We went under the floating barrier, and I waited behind my friend as he went up the ladder, and the next thing I heard was someone shouting. As I looked up to see who it was, I then started hearing the lifeguard's whistle blowing and him pointing. I followed their hand to where they were pointing, and all I saw was the same diving jerk running towards the pool and jumping in. I don't know what happened, but I assume the guy's jump wasn't as calculated because his jump didn't go far. Time slowed to a crawl as this guy crashed into the water, landing directly on me. I flinched, and before I could do anything else, I was under the water, holding my breath. I didn't really like to go under the water like this, so I started to panic as I noticed everything sound muffled. I was too afraid to open my eyes underwater, so I was flailing and holding my arms out, hoping that someone would pull me out. As I did this, I felt something soft near me and grabbed onto it, hoping that whatever it was would help me. Instead, I was shoved by it in my side, causing me to forcefully exhale. Needing to catch my breath, I then inhaled, but I wasn't at the surface yet. I felt the burning in my throat and tried coughing, but it wasn't working. I continued to wave my arms the best that I could, but my efforts felt fruitless, as my little body felt heavier and heavier. At that point, it didn't even feel like my own body, until I was too tired to fight it, and that was the last thing I remembered. I don't know how long it lasted, but the next thing I remembered was someone whispering in my ear to wake up. It reminded me of when my mom would whisper in my ear in the morning to get me out of bed. I felt relaxed, and like I weighed nothing. And then it all came rushing back to me. I felt the cold, hard concrete on my back and could hear my dad's worried voice yelling at me. Then I felt the burning in my throat and nostrils forcing me to cough. That's when I opened my eyes and saw my dad hovering over me. I can't really explain it now, but I just started crying, and my dad hugged me tightly. They later explained that a lifeguard had jumped in and pulled me out, but I was already unconscious by then. They had to do CPR, and I coughed up a lot of water. The lifeguard saw the diving man do this, and they yelled at him to kick him out, but then noticed that I hadn't come back up yet, so they went in to rescue me. Not only did that guy jump on me, purposely or not, but he was also the only one that could have shoved me away when I was struggling. He shoved me underwater and refused to help me. I don't know what his intentions were, but I try to tell myself that it was nothing more than just wanting to splash us. I want to believe that he wasn't actively trying to hurt me or drown me, but at that moment, it was definitely hard to convince me. To this day, I cannot bear to immerse myself in water that rises above my waist. The memory of that day swimming is burned into the deepest recesses of my mind, and I kind of resent him for that. I was only slightly nervous about it, but with time, I got past it. Now, I cannot shake it. Especially being an adult now, I cannot bear the thought of another lifeguard having to rescue me. As a full adult, even though I know they are trained to do that sort of thing. All I know is I hope that that moment scared some sense into that guy, and that he never did it to another person again. From the ages of 17 to 24, I was a lifeguard at a local community pool, and it was still one of my favorite jobs. I started it as just a way to make easy money. I just sat on a chair, yelled out at people doing things they shouldn't be doing, and got to swim for free. We rarely had a situation of actually needing to save someone, but when we did, I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. The adrenaline of being the person to jump in and help someone in need, it wasn't a psychotic or narcissistic thing either. I just realized that I truly loved helping people. That's what made me keep the job for so long, and was also what pushed me to become an EMT. But the story was before my days as an EMT. This happened when I was a lifeguard at the age of 19. I wasn't sure what I wanted to major in yet, but I knew I wanted to do something in the medical field, so after I graduated high school, I started taking my core classes at a local college until I figured it out. My parents were always supportive and let me stay at home until I got my own place. I just chipped in where I could to help with groceries or anything else. So, when I wasn't in class, I was working. I even covered other people's shifts at times. The day of this event was no different. I came in around 10 that day, put on my sunscreen, grabbed my sunglasses and found myself sitting on one of the tall guard chairs. As I scanned the area to make notes of the different people I was seeing, I saw two new people enter. It appeared to be a father and his young daughter. I could see the entrance from where I was, so I saw him scan a card. They walked in and then went off to the side a bit. He knelt down to be at eye level with the girl, and he put one hand on her shoulder and used the other hand to wave it over to the pool, pointing to a specific part. I obviously couldn't hear them, but if I had to guess, it looked as if he was telling her where she was allowed to go in the pool. We had the main pool, a small kiddie pool, 2 water slides, and also a small hot tub, typically used for therapy purposes. I assumed he was just directing her where to stay. Afterwards, he hugged her and then she walked over to the shallow end. The dad, however, walked over to the diving boards and jumped in. I watched him jump in and then swam to the other side of the pool, seemingly just waiting there. I thought it was a little odd that it was just the two of them and he wasn't going to keep an eye on her, but assumed that maybe she was just a very responsible kid, and let it go. But then the weird feelings began. The dad looked up at me, nodding and smiling, and instantly this feeling washed over me, telling me to keep an eye on him. I watched over him as he seemed to people watch from the corner of the pool. Since he wasn't going anywhere, I looked over at the girl that he came in with. She was sitting at the entrance of the pool, playing with one of those little water footballs. I noticed that she would look over at one of the nearby kids playing, almost craving their attention. You could tell by the look on her face that she wanted to play with her, but maybe she was just painfully shy, causing her not to be able to initiate a conversation. Other than being alone, she didn't seem suspicious in the slightest, so I focused my attention back on the dad. That's when I noticed that he seemed to be focusing his attention on 2 other young girls. I would say the girls were probably around 12 to 14 years old. They reminded me of my younger sister. They were sitting on the edge of the pool and just talking, when another lifeguard told them that they couldn't do that, so they got in the pool. Unfortunately, I saw him approach the girls, smiling and greeting them. The girls reciprocated, but I still wanted to keep an eye on him. I would do my normal scan of the pool and surrounding area, but then soon after, my eyes would make their way to that guy again. I noticed the girls now had a different look on their faces. It was more so a look of boredom. Like when someone is telling you something you obviously have no interest in, or maybe just don't understand. Either way, they didn't look like they cared to be talked to by him, or to be in that situation. So I did the best that I could, and when one of my coworkers walked by, I told him about the guy. He actually agreed with me, saying that he noticed him staring too. He said that he was going to go tell the manager on duty so we could force a clear out of the pool, or maybe even do an adult swim, so that we could get him away from the girls and ask them what was going on. If anyone was being inappropriate or not following the rules, they were told to leave. There was also a 3-strike system, and if you were kicked out 3 times, you were banned and never allowed back to the pool. There are, however, some situations, of course, that could get you banned before the 3 strikes. So, while I waited for my coworker to come back with good news, I continued to watch them. The girl's body language was telling me that they were not comfortable with what was happening. I didn't know what he was doing or saying to them, nor did I know what he might try, but I did know that I needed to do something. So I blew my whistle, which made the other guards look over. I yelled at them saying they needed to move as they were too close to the diving part, and the girls immediately walked towards the shallow water. The dad stayed where he was and just had an annoyed look on his face, and then he flipped the bird at me. I shrugged and watched as he walked past the girls and then over to his daughter. He again knelt, and was talking to her when he pointed at the same girl that she'd been eyeing too, and then stood up and disappeared in the restroom. Shortly after, my coworker approached me and said the manager was working on it, but was also relieving me so that I could go to break. I jumped down from the chair and knew immediately what I needed to do. I wanted to see if that girl would talk to me, so I could find out what exactly was happening. I walked around and got in the pool entrance, greeting the young girl. She said hi back, but she still seemed a bit standoffish. I tried to make simple and friendly talk, but I also didn't know how long I had until he came back. So I tried to make a comment about her dad, when she quickly cut me off and said, "He's not my dad." I asked her who he was, and she quietly said, "I don't know, he just brought me here." My stomach dropped, and this without a doubt confirmed that something was wrong here. I think that she knew too and was probably terrified, leading her to tell me, hoping to get help. For her age, she seemed like a very smart girl. I suggested that she come with me so that we could call her parents. She looked at me for a few moments and realized that I too could have been scary or suspicious. I told her that I could go get a girl if that would make her feel better, and she told me it was okay because you're a lifeguard and you save people's lives. That is what I lived for right there. She took my hand and we quickly walked to the post up front. The door is one of those breakaway doors where you can have the bottom half closed and the top half open. The bottom was closed when we approached, but I quickly closed both when we walked in as I didn't want the fake dad to see her. My manager was already back there, and I quietly explained to her what happened, so as to not alarm the girl. We got her a snack and she seemed content sitting on the chair in the back, watching everyone else walk around. We even asked her if she knew her phone number, and she could remember part of it, and she could tell us her parents' names. Unfortunately, she had never been to this pool before, so my idea of looking for her parents in the membership log was shot down. However, we at least knew that we would have this guy's information, so my manager started checking the logs to see who all scanned their passes, while another coworker called the cops. While all this was occurring around me, another coworker approached me and said that the guy was looking around frantically at the pool, most likely trying to find the young girl now under our protection. I was worried that he might bail, thinking that we were onto him, and I wanted so badly for someone to distract him. My manager, however, found his information and told us not to engage in case he tried anything, so we obliged. I went back out to my post as normal, and I watched as this guy paced a bit. He watched the kids going down the slide, and he scanned the whole area, obviously trying to find someone. But shortly after this, I saw him head towards the exits, and then he was gone. He beat the police. But he didn't get far. With the information we were able to give the police, they knew exactly who this girl was, and her parents showed up shortly after the cops did. The girl had actually been reported missing a few hours earlier, as she was at a summer program, and that guy showed up to pick her up. The girl apparently went with him anyways, after he told her that her mom was hurt, and he was going to take her to see her. The guy had been stalking her mom, and thought that he could use her as a leverage to get the mom to come see him. The problem with this plan, though, was that there was no plan after getting the girl. So, he thought he would just take her to the pool that he'd paid for and signed up for with his own name. They were able to track the guy down, and he was arrested that night. I know this because they came back to confirm that they had the same guy that was at the pool. A lot of this was information that I heard that night and on the news. We actually had a local news crew show up filming and asking us tons of questions, so of course I tuned in. That was an entirely different save that I never expected to have, but it's still something that stays in my memory. Nevertheless, there are still things that have gone unanswered. I had asked the other girls that he was talking to what he'd said to them, and he had complimented them on their bodies and asked if they wanted to go back to his place to party. He then proceeded to brag about his massive house and his accomplishments. They became uncomfortable because, of course, a grown man was asking these preteens to come party with him. They had walked to the pool, so they stayed close by until a parent picked them up that night too. If his whole intention was to get to the girl's mom, why would he do that with the other girls? And why did he choose the pool? Not that it makes it better, but I hope that part is true and that he had no other sinister plans with the daughter, or the other girls, but it's kind of hard to believe that. Either way, the guy was locked up and everyone went home safe, but I'm sure still fairly traumatized. And that day was a stark reminder to myself to question even the smallest things that seemed off. My husband and I took a weekend trip to this little water resort several years ago. This place was fantastic. The hotel looked luxurious, but I promise you, it did not cost a fortune. They had a huge indoor and outdoor pool, water slides, a lazy river, and even a water park style place. There were a lot more kids in the water park, but it was still fun to watch. They also had some kind of retro theater that played old movies and an arcade. There was definitely plenty there for everyone, and we had a marvelous time. Well, for the most part. On our second day there, we decided to go swimming in their larger outdoor pool. It was restricted to adults as it went pretty deep and also had a diving side. We were just waiting in the pool, talking and enjoying each other's company while the sun beamed down on us. Little did I know that beneath the shimmering surface, something was ready to shatter our tranquil day at the pool. As we floated along, I thought I felt something brush my leg. Assuming I was just feeling the water, or maybe I hit a spot that was cooler and it threw me off, I ignored it. But when it happened again, I teased my husband Ed about touching me in the water. His face told me pretty quickly that he didn't do anything. The thing is, though, we were in a pool, and I could look down and see the water, and there was nothing near me. But Ed is actually pretty bad at lying, especially when he's trying to play around and prank me, so I believed him. Being a little weirded out, I suggested that we moved a little further into the water. Everything went back to normal after we moved, but only for about another 10 minutes or so. Again, I felt something, but this time it felt like something touched or grabbed my ankle. I could feel the pressure around my ankle like someone had a hold of it, which caused me to kick my foot as forcefully as I could. I told Ed what I had just felt, and we were both staring intently into the water. As expected, there was absolutely nothing around. I was about to suggest that we just get out for a bit, maybe check my leg and make sure nothing was wrong with it, but before I could finish speaking, the feeling came back tenfold. I felt something around my ankle that forcefully pulled me straight down. It literally pulled me under the water. I came back up, but it wasn't for long. I looked at my husband, terrified, and soon I was pulled right back under. I opened my eyes in the chlorinated water, but even through the blurriness, I could only see one set of legs near me, which were Ed's. There's no way that he could have done that. When I came up the second time, I didn't hesitate. I wrapped my arms around Ed and told him to get me the hell out of there. We went to the side of the pool, and I gripped onto the side as I slowly swam to the shallow end, when I felt the tug one more time. This time it wasn't as hard, as my head didn't go under, but it was still just as terrifying. It caused me to scream, and my breathing was clearly faster than normal, By the time we got to the steps, I rushed out of the water, spinning around, looking at my surroundings and back into the water. There was nothing around the spot where we were. I just stood there, shivering from fear and trying to grasp what the hell just happened to me. Ed looked just as confused and worried. We found a table to sit at nearby, and after calming down some more, I explained to my husband what I had just experienced. He said that it even looked like something out of a movie. I went straight underwater, and it was so quick that it made no sense. We could not come up with any reason for this to happen, and after that whole show, I was not in the mood to swim again, so we just went back to our room for the night. The next day, we didn't want to spoil our trip, so we did go back to the pools, but this time, we just did the lazy river. I was sitting in a tube, so my feet were not in the water, and thankfully nothing happened. However, I did get this weird feeling about halfway through the river. I got this sense that I was being watched, and like whoever was watching me was not happy. Like I could feel the anger surrounding me. It was almost unbearable. I just took deep breaths and closed my eyes, trying to enjoy the remainder of the ride until we got to the end. By the time we got off, everything was back to normal again. I explained to Ed what happened, and we just avoided the water for the rest of our stay. I didn't need to have something drowning me or people looking at me like I was crazy. To this day, I still have no idea what that was. The resort that we stayed at was practically new. It had only been open a few years prior to our visit, and it was a brand new building. My first thought was that it could be haunted, but how could that be possible? Ed and I swear to this day that we saw nothing in the water near us when I was being pulled under, and the feeling on the river made no sense. At least, neither of us saw someone angrily staring at me, but I sure as hell felt it. If anyone has any ideas, I'm open to hear them. But until then, I think that I'm just going to avoid visiting that place again. Back in the early 2000s, my family and I went on a camping trip to a popular lake. The drive was about 4 hours, which wasn't terrible, but there were 3 of us kids. Me being the oldest at 15, my younger brother 10, and my sister 6. And of course, both my mom and my dad. Upon arrival, we set up our tents, which consisted of a large family-style tent and a much smaller one. My parents and younger siblings shared the larger one, and they let me have one to myself. Sometimes my little sister would want to sleep in the tent with me, and that was okay. She was a pretty hard sleeper. Once the tents were put up, I was free to do whatever I really wanted as long as we stayed close. My siblings stayed near the tents, playing with their toys in the nearby gravel and sand. I don't know why I remembered this place so well, but I knew how to get to the beach, and I wanted to walk there to swim. I was given permission, so I grabbed a towel and headed towards the water. I sat on the beach for a while, just taking in the warm sun until I finally wanted to jump into the water. There were already several people there, so I wasn't alone, but I was thankfully left alone. I did notice a younger boy that looked close to my age that was swimming, wearing goggles and seemingly diving into the water. I remember watching for a while because I didn't bring goggles, or even think to do so. But I thought it would be cool to use them and look at the bottom of the lake. I guess I was staring a bit too much because he noticed and smiled at me. A bit embarrassed, I smiled back and then turned away to make myself look preoccupied, as much as you can standing in a bed of water. The rest of that evening went without incident. I washed off in the nearby showers and then headed back to my family where they were preparing dinner. The trip went about the same while we were there. We ate together, played some games together, maybe even fished, and then I would head to the beach to swim with the rest of my family following shortly behind. It wasn't unusual, but I did see that same boy just about every time we went swimming. He would either already be there, or he would end up showing up shortly after I did. I didn't mind it though, as I did think he was cute and he was paying me attention, so what was the harm? Eventually, he did approach me and handed me a rock that had a cool impression on it, saying that he thought I would like it. Then we started talking about all what he'd seen down there, and he let me use the goggles. It was actually pretty fun, and I told myself to get goggles the next time we either went into town, or next time we planned to come out here. I looked forward to going swimming, anticipating that he would be there, so I made an effort to look my best. As much as I could. We were there for 4 days, 3 nights, and on the 3rd day, he said that they were going to be leaving the next morning, so that would be the last time he would get to go swimming. I made a comment about how we should do one last dive together to see what we find, and he suggested that we swim further out, towards the safety barrier that was out there. I agreed, thinking it was something different as I rarely went out that far. There was really no reason to. I guess I just never needed or wanted to, but there we went, racing how fast we could swim to it. After we arrived, I think I dived once, and then he took the goggles back and motioned for me to come closer, like he was going to whisper something to me. It seemed silly at the time because there wasn't anyone close enough to hear us, but I obliged. He then suggested that we make out. I had gone through several crushes, but I had never dated anyone at this point, so this took me completely by surprise. I could feel my face getting hot, and I really didn't know what to say. I stammered and was finally able to speak, offering to give him our phone number. We just had a landline at the time. He laughed and accepted the number, but then again pushed his first intentions, while putting his hand on my side. I pushed it off of me and told him that I didn't even know him, and at that point was starting to feel uncomfortable and like my time was spoiled. I told him I had to go and started swimming back. He made a remark at me, but I didn't even look back and continued my way out of the water, feeling like I needed a shower more than usual, so I went to the stalls to do so. The bathrooms and showers for men and women are completely separated buildings, with the women's being closer to the front of the beach. Walking in, you see the sinks and bathroom stalls, and in the back there are 4 showers. I usually put my clothes and towel on the bench right outside of the stall because I hated putting on wet clothes, which meant that I undressed outside of the stall. I got in, used the cheap soap dispenser they provided, and lathered up. As I showered, I started getting this uneasy feeling that would just not go away. My nerves were already on edge, so I stopped to look around. I even opened the stall door, peeking out into the room, seeing if someone was around. It was empty. I went back to my shower, dismissing it as paranoia stemming from the odd encounter with the boy. But as I continued, so did the feeling. It was like someone was watching me. Not being able to overcome this feeling, I quickly turned off the water and flung open the door. As I looked around again, I saw a dark shadow towards the entrance, like someone was just standing at it, just about to enter, or maybe they were leaving. I was suspicious at this point because I never heard a toilet flush or another shower turn on. I turned to get dressed so that I could just get out of there when my heart plummeted to the floor. My clothes were gone. My towel was on the floor like it was dropped in a rush, but that was it. I looked under the bench and in all the stalls, but they were gone. This confirmed my suspicion, and confirmed that it wasn't just a shadow, that there was someone in there with me. I wrapped my towel around me, and I looked out the door to see if I saw anyone around. Anyone carrying my clothes, but there were just a few people that were already at the beach when I left. Except for one. I didn't see that boy anywhere. I knew it had to be him. And if it was him, what are the chances I felt like I was being watched because I was? The showers were just like the toilet stalls, so there were breaks in the wall where anyone could have easily been looking. I also then recall the remark he made as I was leaving. He said something along the lines of, "Fine, go take your shower then." I wasn't even out of the water yet, so why would he assume that's where I was going? I felt violated and scared, not knowing what to do. He took everything. My clothes and my bathing suit were just gone. I paced for a while in there trying to figure out what I was going to do. I could wait until someone else came in and told them, or I could make a run for it. The walk wasn't that far, but still way further than my 15-year-old self was willing to go in just a towel. So, I waited. I knew my parents would either show up eventually to swim, or because they were worried that I hadn't returned yet. But I also hoped that someone would come in sooner and I could tell them to get my parents. Thankfully, that's what happened. 2 older ladies came in, and right before they got into the showers, I asked them for help. I told them that someone took my clothes, and they looked appalled. One lady gave me her cover-up dress, which was obviously too big, but not at all see-through, thankfully. And they walked with me back to my family. It became a fiasco when I got back. I had to embarrassingly explain why I didn't have my clothes, and even though I had no proof, I wasn't going to hold back the fact that I had an idea of who could have done it. My dad's face instantly became red. After I got dressed and gave the lady's dress back, my dad wanted to drive around looking for this kid. We went to the beach and to different campgrounds, but we never saw him. I never saw him interacting with anyone at the beach, so I couldn't even identify his family or anyone that he'd come with. We went back to our camp without any luck. I could tell that my dad was still furious, and even though I knew he wasn't mad at me, I still felt bad. I felt like I ruined our trip. We went home the next day as normal, but my mom slept in the tent with me just to be safe. We never saw that kid again, nor did I get my clothes, and I still get this creepy, gross feeling that he's out there somewhere, still holding on to them. So that, my friends, was a collection of some scary swimming stories. All of these stories are genuinely terrifying for me because they involve swimming or water. That's right. Your boy, Raven, is, I think the appropriate word is thalassophobic. I cannot stand being in large bodies of water. This includes swimming pools where water comes up above my chest area. I'm good up until that point, and then after that I start to go into a little bit of a panic attack. Yeah. I cannot swim. I can't really float. I just freak out in the water if it gets too deep. I can still enjoy water if it's shallow enough, but I get terrified in deeper water. So that means every single one of these stories is a horrible phobia of mine, because water scary, I do not like it. Terrifying. Hate water. Yeah. Anyways, hopefully you all thought they were scary too, whether it be for the same reason or because they were scary stories. That's entirely on your end. If you did enjoy them, please hit that thumbs up button. I would really appreciate it. If you are new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider subscribing. I'd appreciate that too. You can also go down below the video and leave me a comment letting me know your thoughts, how you're doing. Do you enjoy swimming? If so, great. If not, then we're in the same boat. Though we'll never be in the boat together because I won't be in a boat because boats go on the water, and no thank you. You can also do things such as joining Patreon or membership where you get early access to content like this and other things depending on how you sign up and what you sign up for. There's also the super thanks, which is just to support the channel button. Never expected, always appreciated. All that said, my beautiful friends, I hope you are having a lovely weekend so far. I do hope the rest of the weekend treats you so very well. And until then, until the next time you come around these parts, remember that you are loved. You are valid. You are important. You're the best you that you can be. Never forget it, and don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. And of course, until next time, friends, much love, and sleep well.